mic's up. Studio is live. Good morning, Lagos. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Today it's time for Freshly Pressed 981 at 7:30 a.m. I'm Ayo Mairo Ese.
And my name is Valentine Ohu. Good morning.
And we have with us our analysts who will be doing justice to the stories this morning. We have Barrister Funmi Odude.
Morning, OAPIO. Since we are doing this.
And good morning, Barrister Ada Folu Ogunkeye.
Wow. Good morning. Good morning. I don't know what to say about that, but good morning, Lagos.
All right, Lagos, this is how we would like for you to get involved in the conversation this morning. You can use WhatsApp, Twitter, and YouTube.
Our WhatsApp number is 0809-444-0981, 0809-444-0981.
Okay, OAP Valentine. Yeah, YouTube is on. You can go on to Smooth 98.1 FM and use the live stream option to send us your messages.
Okay, so let's start with a story from Premium Times. Premium Times reports that Nigerian lawmakers are calling for national census by 2020, identifying the usual, what we already know that in a anonymous circumstances, we're supposed to have this census in 5 years.
Well, let's go through it. So, the last census that was conducted in Nigeria officially was in 2006, and clearly that's a very long time for there to have last been a census. It means that a lot of the figures that we've been working with as a nation and as a state as well, talking about Lagos State, are projected figures. They're not particularly accurate. Now, the motion by the House of Representatives was sort of put forward or led by Ademori Kwe of APC Lagos that says until this is made a mandatory national ritual held at intervals just like elections, Nigeria will continue to have delays in organizing the national census. So he makes a number of valid points which are important. He does highlight the importance of having the census, saying that we are a dynamic economy and we have a large population. We're expected to double in the next 2 decades. And if you don't have accurate numbers, you cannot plan accurately. You cannot create infrastructure necessary for all the people within the various states, within the entire country. So that's a very important thing. He also talks about the issues from even the last census figures that we have. Historically, he refers them as being almost inaccurate because a number of the figures for states and local governments were nullified by courts. For example, Lagos, whose population was put at over 9 million, the state government challenged the figures, conducted their own census, and ended up putting our population at the time at over 16 million. And we've been working with these projected estimates since. I think it's great that they're talking about having a census. However, there's nothing new in this story. I would have loved to have seen or heard lawmakers referring to the modus by which the census will be conducted, talking about the budget implications of the census, trying to figure out a way of incorporating technology in a way that will be cost effective and practical for the people. That's what they should be focusing their energy on, not unnecessary sound bites and really sort of pointless rhetoric. It does make me think and want to question and do a little bit of research into, okay, who are the companies that are going to be involved in conducting the census? Who has personal interest in those companies? I think that we're at a time and an age in this country where we must begin to look a little bit deeper. It's not about pointing accusing fingers, but it's about saying, hey, sir, this doesn't make any sense. We don't want this. Please take this and go. So yes, the census is important. Having one every 10 years, I think makes perfect sense to do that. But the devil is in the details, and that's what we need. And it's just not in this story.
Yeah. So it's identified not to be personal interest, decisions they make or things they push, should be beyond.
And then, as with everything that comes up now, there will always be the question of where we get the money to do it. So
important question.
How important is it in our scale of preference?
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you. Innovation. New Telegraph has this next headline. Senate raises 2020 budget by 450 billion naira. Representatives raised theirs by 260 billion naira. I did the math earlier. 710 billion in total. What does this take us? Why the new increments? Is there a justification to this for me?
The increment is actually, the story says that mostly for debt servicing. And, it's the same thing we have.
Wow.
We have been saying every time we need to borrow money, that concern was always raised, that we'll meet it in the future by virtue of the fact that a huge chunk of our revenue, a huge chunk of our budget will go to debt servicing. And so that is practically what we're seeing here. So the new figure that, well, it has not yet been passed, but the new figure that has been presented by the committee to the Senate is 10.78 trillion naira. And out of that, 2.7 trillion is going to be used for debt servicing, 4.8 trillion for recurring non-debt expenditure. So a total of about 7.5 trillion naira on running ourselves and paying debt, which leaves just about 3 trillion for doing the good stuff. And out of that, we're going to have about 560 billion for statutory transfers and what have you. And then the rest cannot be used for capital projects. And we know that what makes this particularly sad is the fact that this is the budget. When the sums that depending on what our revenue is, when the sum is actually now disbursed, of course, it's the capital projects that is the last, almost like the one that is the last child that is fed. We have to service our debt, and this goes to the recent story about us even borrowing again. I mean, we need to come to the table and discuss our reality. This story spreads our reality out open. The good part of the story is we're looking to pass the budget before the end of the year. And so is this the first time in Nigeria's fiscal history, I don't know, that would be running a January to December?
The first time
budget.
in over 6 years.
Budget.
Over 6 years, really.
Let's not hold our breath just yet.
Yeah, we might be running a January to December budget cycle, but then, I mean, this story is just stark reality of what we've always known. A huge chunk of our budget goes to debt servicing and recurrent expenditure,
which is very, very, very worrying. The next story from the Punch newspaper speaks to the gas explosion that rocked Lagos Hotel and injured 7 people. Some people are said to have lost their limbs. A lot of scary details to the story, but Folu, take us through this.
All right. The Punch newspaper narrates that at least 7 people were injured on Wednesday after a gas cylinder exploded at the 4 Points by Sheraton Hotel in Oniru area of Lagos. Now, it was very concerning for a number of people who were in the area. I do know that messages started going around almost immediately for anyone that was working in the area, living in the area. They felt the tremor. They felt what felt like an aftershock. And naturally, the initial concern was, oh my goodness, is this some sort of attack? How must we move? Now, I think it was very sad because also before this newspaper article, another story that was going around was that there was drilling work going on, that there was a borehole that was being dug, and that they hit a gas line. According to this, that wasn't the case. Apparently, it was welders that were working on the premises of the hotel that were using gas to weld some steel together, but one of the cylinder hoses leaked and the cylinder exploded. Now, when I hear stories like this, it really breaks my heart because I think these are almost careless mistakes that really could be avoided with a little bit more attention to detail, with a little bit more maintenance going on. Because if you're using a cylinder hose that's leaking, I mean, that's really concerning. And the way the story is narrated, it almost feels like it took a little bit of time, or it wasn't an instantaneous explosion. The other thing that is pointed out in this story, in fact, the Director General of Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, Funmi Odude, I hope I didn't ruin his name, apologies, sir, said that the emergency response plan by the hotel in particular was actually flawed. There were no emergency muster points. I think we assume that things will always go well, and things do not always go well. We must start taking public safety a lot more seriously. Anywhere that people are working, people are living as a community, that's an official space. We do need to take our safety really seriously. I think that in Nigeria, we become really careless with our lives and with each other's lives, because if we're more careful with not just our lives, but each other's lives, mistakes like this wouldn't happen. And definitely my hearts and prayers go out to those who are injured. I certainly hope that no lives have been lost as a result of what sounded like some severe injury, and the full details are unable to come out because the police in the area confessed. I'm not necessarily sure that was to protect the individuals. I feel that maybe that was to protect the institution.
Exactly.
And that's a bit of a shame because the people deserve to know exactly what happened and the extent of the damage.
Besides, I was going to ask you, Folu, I mean, doesn't this expose in great detail, the lack of proper regulatory services or regulation, from who's the regulatory body that watches, checks all these hospitality businesses around Lagos and certain cities?
Well, I mean, that's something definitely worth looking into, but let's not forget these are, I'm imagining, external contractors who have come in to do a job.
Yeah.
And at that point, that is that company's responsibility to make sure that there's safety there. Perhaps the hotel, I'm sure the hotel had been using perhaps the services of that company for a while, which is what happens with most people. You have your regular gas suppliers, you have your normal plumbers, and these are people that just go through. But now it will create awareness, I think, for a number of institutions across the board to double check, to double down on that, because these sorts of injuries and possible fatalities are easily avoided.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Something else I need to touch on is response. Yes, we all have issues like this sometimes.
Yes.
That's why they're called accidents.
Absolutely.
But I would love to understand what the hotel's response was in terms of, first reaction, and then, also personnel that are responsible for that from the state, because we talk about health and safety a lot, and because unfortunately we are reactionary, so until something happens we then find out that we don't have a policy for this or this, or we didn't make a provision for that. It would be good to know what the provision for health and safety in the incident of an accident like this, what the hotel's response would be.
I would like to think that they have insurance that covers these sorts of things. They should have accidental coverage at some point. I believe that if they don't, there'll probably be an insurance company around nearby at this point. But I will say again, Lagos State Emergency Management Agency seems to be really quick on response to the best of their ability. I do know that they're understaffed and they're undermanned, and obviously there's never really enough money when it comes to things like healthcare. But whenever there is a major incident, we do see them on the scene pretty quickly. So a big shout out to Lagos State for that.
Well, Oyewole, thank you, Folu, for that. Oyewole reacts to the Director General of LASEMA's statement, as Femi, he said, no, the Lagos State man is lying. I've been to 4 points severally. There's a master point there. He can't just make such a statement. He's trying. What's he trying to do? Run down the hotel, please.
Interesting. Perhaps the staff were not conversant with how to get to the muster point, because it's one thing to have signs painted. It's another thing for your staff to have rehearsed these drills. What happens in the case of an emergency? What do we do should such things happen?
Exactly. How often the drills are
with
conducted.
the turnover that a lot of these institutions have with respect to staffing, how often do they do trainings?
Thank you. Very, very important points to consider. Punch newspaper has this next story. Funmi, I'll come to you for your analysis on this one. The National Security Advisor, the Major General Babangana Monguno, he said on Wednesday he raised the fresh concern over the Almajiri system in the north, saying that the country could no longer afford to sweep it under the carpet, saying essentially that they should get rid of it. We know it's been in existence since the 1900s in the north, and it's a system of education, obviously, that depends
that has now been abused.
What are your thoughts regarding
so can I say that I absolutely love the story? So the NSA was revealing a new security roadmap for the country, and it's a strategy that, well, Ayo says we like to be reactionary, but it's a strategy that is both reactionary and preventative in nature. So they're dealing with the current security challenges we're facing, but not forgetting those ones that we're ignoring right now, which is the major one that he mentioned, being the Almajiri system. And then he disclosed that the new strategy was a comprehensive approach to address poverty, healthcare delivery challenges, out-of-school children, and so all of those things that currently face Nigeria security, and it's fantastic. Yes. I mean, it is very fantastic.
Especially illiteracy.
Yes, he mentioned illiteracy, and then he mentioned something. It's heartwarming when a government official, especially somebody in a position like this, in the position of the NSA, can actually, put the spotlight on a lot of our issues that we've been talking about, but it looks like the government is not listening. Particularly, let me quote him here. He says, fundamentally, if you're going to take care of these problems, we need to try and safeguard the fast-growing young population of Nigeria. And guess what? We need to look at the issues of poverty eradication and illiteracy. So our population growth has been a subject of debate for a long time, with a lot of people asking why we can't use it positively like China and all of that. But when you look at our infrastructure deficits, it does not. It's likely to be more of a security challenge than a plus for us. And so when you also recall the recent stories we've had about the torture homes and the torture chambers that have been found in that region of the country. I mean, it goes without saying that it is a ticking time bomb, and it's time that we recognize that we don't have to wait till it becomes a full-blown security challenge to deal with it. And so, having addressed it, I mean, we're waiting for the next stage of how they are going to now deal with this issue, collaborating with the lawmakers to make necessary legislations, the kind of policies they put in place to address the key problems and the key challenges that he has identified. But I mean, it's fantastic.
Exactly, fantastic is to say, you said the least. Fully, you hit the nail on the head when you said him casting on this issue is really calling it what it is. I mean, especially speaking to security concerns, we know that when the Almajiri system started, being pushed aside, that's where the Western education started being introduced, and then it was regarded as Boko, and we know how Boko Haram started and everything.
And just to, you know how we like to ignore things, even in Lagos, we have this issue of a lot of the beggars that have come now posing security challenges. I mean, we've had stories of a particular guy that likes to feign like you've hit him and start demanding money. I mean, these are issues that are glaring that in time to come, it will become more than, especially when you consider the traffic situation of Lagos.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to become a serious security challenge. So we don't have to wait till it gets to that point if we can identify it now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Funmi. From our comment section, we have having a muster point is totally different from you. My organization does quarterly drills, and we have a fair idea of how long it would take last 24-floor building. That's from Daniel.
Thank you, Dami. Dari from Lagos says people prefer to record and snap accident scenes on their phones rather than lending helping hands to victims, and things like this need to change. Thank you very much.
Still on the Lagos story, we have from RD. Yes, the work was done by an external consultant, but there's what is called a job safety analysis, which has to be conducted before jobs like this, especially with a hotel like that. Truth is, health and safety is not taken seriously. Not shocking, as we never take anything which relates to lives seriously. Thank you very much for your comments. Please keep them coming through. Move on to our next story from Premium Times. Please charge APC chieftain for abusing governor on social media. All right, Folu, I'll come to you. Now, a Nigerian politician has been charged by the police in Niger State with criminal conspiracy after lashing out at the state governor for alleged corruption and neglect of local roads. Now, Mr. Kacha is his name, and he's Mr. Abubakar Kacha. He's been arraigned before the Chief Magistrate's Court in Minna yesterday afternoon. Please tell us what you think about this story.
I mean, according to the story, Mr. Kacha accused the governor of fraudulently diverting funds, public funds, to himself and his family. Also said that they're unable to repair the state roads within the state. The police said that the offenses that he committed contradicted sections 97(2) of the Penal Code, 397, section 393, and section 114. Now, 393 is a really confusing one because, I sort of looked it up and that has nothing to do with what's happening here. Sections like 97, yes, public servant framing incorrect record or writing or mistranslating document with intent to cause injury or to save person from punishment or property from forfeiture. Again, I feel like these the laws under which he's sort of being accused, or I struggle to see how a reasonable person would follow through on this, or how this would stick. I really do struggle. It does, of course, touch on issues that have been very sensitive in Nigeria at the moment, of restricting our freedom of speech, restricting the right of the individual, public or private, to speak out and to ask questions of people in authority. I feel that as a nation, and for anyone who's listening who is in public service, you must be ready for the public to ask you questions. You must be ready for people to say, well, what have you done with our funds? And if people feel that they have proof accusing you, then let's take that to court. Let's go through the process. I think jailing people, trying to intimidate people, which is what this comes across as. This article certainly reads that way. The other stories that we've had that have come out, there have been a spate of them happening, certainly comes across that way, and it's not encouraging. But I think this is a rallying cry for the Nigerian people to really stick to our guns on this, and we will not be quiet. It's been a long several decades of people being, and there's been mismanaged funds, when people in authority who ought to know better and who ought to and refuse to do either.
Mhm.
And we must continue to speak out about it. I mean, that's the long and short of this story.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
can I quickly put a little balance to it?
Please do.
We do have a right to freedom of expression, to freedom to share information. But with every freedom, I mean, there is the balance of exercising a responsibility.
Absolutely.
And so there are both criminal and civil remedies for libel,
Exactly.
for slander. So abusing somebody, insulting somebody, I mean, it goes to morals. Be as free as you want to. But when you're accusing someone of something that is likely to be a criminal act,
Yes.
if you cannot, without substantial,
Don't
and I
proof.
know we do that a lot.
Yeah, I was going
Yes.
to say
We
that.
do
correct.
that a lot. We hide under the guise of abuse and say
It's free speech.
Yeah.
you're a criminal, you are corrupt and all of that. So we need to get that balance straight. We have, apart from the general criminal code that provides for libel and slander, we have the Cyber Crimes Act, and which provides that if you put out false information about another person, that is with the intent of causing that person harm, it is a criminal offense.
Thank you
So
so
let's
much
balance.
for highlighting, thank you, Folu and Funmi, for highlighting that, because indeed, like you mentioned, a lot of people make careless statements.
People are reckless.
Yes, they don't understand that it's actually a crime, and they're like, well, I have a right to speak. You have the right to speak facts.
Yes.
And that you can actually defend.
An opinion.
And
Yes,
and
and
opinions.
opinions. But when you make such a strong allegation of someone committing a crime, then you must be ready to back that up.
And then again, goes out to those who are crying for, hate speech bill to be passed. Really, there are laws already enshrined.
There's so many laws that already deal with this.
Absolutely do not need.
That's a waste
Thank
of time.
you so much. All right, let's move on to the next story. Sad one for me. Jolad Hospital. I mean, some people had heard about the story of the 29-year-old Radio Balogun, who was reportedly stabbed in the neck in Bagada on her way from work. She was rushed to our Jolad Hospital in Bagada as well, and where she unfortunately lost her life due to excessive bleeding. Social media went off, and people started talking about the fact that the hospital had denied her treatment because they said they needed and this was unverified, by the way, needed a police report. They've come out to say no, that wasn't the reason why. The reasons why. But please, Funmi, can you take us through this?
Okay, so this is the hospital's response basically, and they've denied that no, they didn't do that. And what happened was that examined her and found out that, well, she would need a vascular surgeon immediately, and so they moved her to the state-run Bagada General Hospital, but that, well, they didn't make it in time and all of that. So we've had the accuser and the accused. What we would like to see is the regulatory agency, I don't know if it's the Ministry of Health or the association, the
Ministry
medical,
of Health, definitely.
yes, to investigate and see. I mean, what were you expecting from the hospital? They would not admit to any wrongdoing. But I know that with a lot of health issues in this country, it's I'm not sure we've had any record of any health practitioner being brought to book, particularly.
It is so concerning.
It
People do not take up cases of medical negligence or malpractice.
Yes, I mean, I was reading whose story was it yesterday about a wrong treatment plan that her doctor had been giving her, and that she was ready to sue.
You have many cases of
yes,
this.
we have many cases of this, but we don't follow it up.
Yes.
I mean, so what I'm expecting, I mean, the hospital can respond to correct their public and what have you. But what I would like to see is the Ministry of Health getting a proper investigation into what happened.
Yes.
And it is that report of the Ministry of Health that we are more concerned about.
Especially considering the reality that a lot of people do ask for a police report before they treat you. And people know that this happens, and it's a really, really awful thing that happens.
I think it's important to also cite that it's a violation of a 2017 law that mandates treatment of gunshot victims without a police report. So if you go to a hospital and they demand for a police report, it's actually
criminal.
Yes, it's criminal. They shouldn't. And another aspect I'd just like to quickly touch on this story is the state of security. So this happened apparently. It wasn't very late into the night. It happened. She was stabbed, and we've had
in traffic.
In traffic, we've had incidences like this being reported at this time. And I was having a conversation with Val earlier on that what's going on with regards to security personnel in Lagos State, at least where we are. I don't know how many of you have had people that being robbed. I was telling Valentine, in the space of 1 month, I know 4 people who have been attacked, who have been, hit with
Dear.
machetes, with a machete, and it's worrying. We
Yes.
have to talk about this. What's the explanation? In addition to the Ministry of Health, we want to get a statement from the police as well. Why was a young girl not protected on her way
Yeah.
from work?
And then when I know that we cry a lot about traffic, but this is the second story that I'm hearing that somebody lost a life because they couldn't get medical attention quickly enough.
Thank you very much.
Obamachi, there's a Census reacting to the gas explosion story. Said, now I've noticed this with cooking gas explosions of recent. What is cooking gas? Cooking gas is propane or butane, which is colorless or odorless, which is why additives that I can't remember the name of, I'm sure consumers notice a leak is if it ever happens. But recently, the local gas or the LPG they've stopped adding these additives because of gains. Interesting.
Wow, and that's scary.
Yeah, that's really
Yes.
scary.
If that's true, that's very scary.
Ada Funmi says the gas explosion was an accident and not a hospitality accident at that. It happened outside. Please leave the good name of the hotel, and they do have a muster point. Those who were seizing phones of those who could have helped a sad situation. This is another infringement of people's rights.
If there wasn't the leak, there won't be an explosion in the first place. So that's to address the source.
Okay, let's move on to our next story. Daily Times, Folu. Senate may order arrest of NIMASA DG Peterside. Daily Times reports. Actually, sir, that's for me, for you. The Senate has threatened to wield the big stick by ordering immediate arrest of the Director General of Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, Dr. Dakuku Peterside. Now, I have a question to ask you, for me. Why set up committees that won't be respected? A few days back, we spoke about the NBC and Chief Lai Mohammed, who is the Minister of Information and Culture, refusing to appear before the Senate, and so the case was thrown out. In this case, Dr. Peterside said was attending a conference in London, so he sent a representative.
Okay. Well, so it always boils down to investment. I mean, if I know that you're not going to do anything to me, the chances is out of my good nature and home training. That's if I know that I won't have consequences. So it always goes back to the fact of when the executive, particularly when you're dealing with the executive who have the enforcement machinery. So I mean, the National Assembly issues an arrest order. Who enforces it? The same executive. The court issues an order. Who enforces it? We still have that challenge in Nigeria, especially when you're dealing with an executive. I mean, we're still managing with respect to rule of law. So when we get there, we'll get there. But there is another angle to the story that I would like to touch on. He was actually represented by the principal legal officer of the agency, Barrister Haruna, and that is the bit of my challenge. They want to investigate the activities of the agency, not him. Who says that he's the only one with all the information that they need?
Absolutely. I was waiting for that.
He says it's principal legal officer. And they didn't, it's a different thing if they had started in guy and he could not provide the information, could not provide the details that they wanted. But insisting that the head of, it's likely that even the principal legal officer has more information that the head of the agency would have over what they're investigating, because they're investigating illegal activities. So shouldn't even be the officer that is before the committee. But they insist that, I don't know if it's a power play or something, but if you send your principal legal officer,
that should
and
suffice.
you do not even allow him to speak, you don't allow him to address the committee, you don't know if, so it's not a case of, oh, you came unprepared, you didn't come with the information that we required, we didn't come with. I mean, so so it's not like he completely ignored the invitation. It's not as if NIMASA completely ignored it. They sent their principal legal officer, but for some strange reason, they want the headman himself.
You know, just on a lighter note, this is why there's a lot of traffic in town. Unnecessary meetings that just don't need to happen. I'm just saying.
Internet, no lights.
Video call the guy.
Right.
We have comments.
Yes, please.
Adiola says, good morning, House. It seems what we have now are public masters and not servants in government.
The moment they learn that they should actually serve first, it's part of service, really, then, before you become a boss. Temi from Bagada says, the state of security is very worrying in Bagada. You would see area boys stopping people and asking them for money in broad daylight, and life would be threatened if one refuses. Scary. This other one here from D says, that's true, referring to failure to include additives to gas or LPG. The DPR needs to look into the action of gas distributors. By the way, is Folu. Hi, Folu.
Hi, I'm a visiting analyst. Thank you very much.
Modupa says, you nailed the issue on the head. There are zero consequences for wrongdoing. DSS ignores the courts, nothing happens. Minister refuses to show up in court, nothing. Until you have real consequences for wrongdoing in Nigeria, people will go ahead and do anything they like.
Perhaps we can
talk about
focus on real wrongdoing. So again, I'm just saying.
Talking about consequences, I wish you could touch on this, but I'll just say the headline. Sanction banks over casual workers. Reps urge the Central Bank of Nigeria.
House of Reps, there are more important things for us to focus on than who's employing who and whether people again should be showing up to work. This is traffic. This is the problem. Leave the contract workers do their contract work. Thank you.
All right, Folu, thank you so much. And thank you very much, Funmi, as well. You can find Folu at Folu Storms on Twitter and Funmi at Funmi Odude on Twitter. Find us at Smooth91FM on Twitter. The conversation continues. Use the hashtag FRESHLYPRESSED981 to air your views. And at 9 o'clock during Lagos Talks 981, we get to share in more detail one of the stories from this morning. But next, we have the Grapevine 981. Good morning.